news of the Norfolk Southern train derailment that occurred in East Palestine, Ohio, has effectively disappeared from the news. The accident occurred on February 2nd, 2023. And while the derailment and its aftermath seem to be old news to many people, it's not old news to the people who work for Norfolk Southern, the management team and the employees, nor the shareholders of Norfolk Southern. And obviously, it's not old news to the poor people who live in East Palestine, Ohio, who are living from its effects minute by minute, day by day, and may continue to do so for the next 10 or maybe even 20 years or so. We have to continue to think about that. But Norfolk Southern itself, its market cap is down $10 billion. It's roughly 17% lower than where it was before the derailment, whereas the industry is only down 1 to 4%. The New York State Comptroller has stated that its proxy is insisting that all 13 members of the board be removed. In addition, a pension plan, the employees' pension plan of Bucks County, Pennsylvania, has now sued Norfolk Southern for making misleading statements about its safety culture. And the cost of cleanup is estimated to be $400 million, but you can bet that number is going to be a lot higher than that over time. What I read about the derailment, though, is the seeds of this situation may have been actually sown 20 years ago by an individual named E. Hunter Harrison. E. Hunter Harrison is now deceased, but he was a CEO of 4 major railroads over the years, and he had basically espoused this program of strict cost cutting in the organizations that he had joined, and it spread across the industry. His philosophy was called Precision Scheduling Railroading, in effect PSR, and effectively what it did was it cut stations, it cut locomotives, it cut people, and at the expense of safety, making trains much longer and much heavier and much more difficult to stop. Despite that, unions and railroad safety officials and even members of Congress were saying that this PSR was making the whole system less safe. For a long time, PSR prevailed, though, until the pandemic, where the rebound of the economy, the railroad industry was not poised to be able to add that additional capacity to the system because they had wrung out so much inefficiency over time. And the railroad industry will continue to play catch up with this situation with their lack of capacity at this time. Much has been written, too, about these heat safety sensors and that the train that derailed had logged in a temperature of 253 degrees, which was well above the acceptable limit of between 170 and 200 degrees or so. Is that while the train crew of 3 were alerted to the problem, this train was so large, it was 1.5 miles long, it couldn't stop in time for them to inspect the problem before the derailment occurred, spewing these hazardous chemicals, including vinyl chloride. What I thought was interesting, too, a little piece of information in looking at this situation, is that Norfolk Southern had refused for years to join a federal program that would allow employees to confidently, or call it confidentially, communicate close calls, as they call it, but basically concerns about safety and how those concerns could be elevated to a sufficient level in order to be communicated and identified and dealt with. Norfolk Southern and several large organizations have since said now, since the derailment, that they will join this communications program sponsored by the federal government. But the factors, these risk factors in looking at Norfolk Southern and the train derailment, many of them were in place. Design flaws, deferred maintenance, economic pressure, scheduling constraints, lack of planning and preparedness, communication failure, arrogance, and political agendas. To learn more about how you can apply these risk factors to enhance the culture of your ERM program, check out ermexchange.com.